Have you ever traveled through time? We do it every day.
Asgardia is a country with a population of more than 1 million people from more than 200 countries on Earth. Asgardia gives everyone equal opportunities, no matter what their earthly status is.
It is possible to create and live in the future right now. Are you ready? Forward progress is the solution to the entire human race. Our mission is to bridge new horizons. In Asgardia, there is no limit to the universal development in the fields of technology, finance, and arts. Asgardia is a new space and digital economy which creates opportunities for the global economy. We deliver innovations. Do you want to get on board with us? We are developing various kinds of digital businesses, attracting them to the Asgardia platform that can be backed by the means of our umbrella, i.e. franchising of the Asgardia brand. We can not only attract investments into space programs from prominent institutional investors, but also affordable amounts from the citizens of Asgardia. We comprise of more than 1 million people.
Asgardia is a chance to realize one's dream. This is a dream-driven space nation. Asgardia is a chance to belong to a community of free-thinking enthusiasts, goal-driven dreamers, and fearless innovators, theorists, and scientists.
We are the first space nation. One humanity, one unity.
Asgardia.
We are creating
The future.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning for you. It's all relative.
Good morning, John.
With proper
Good morning.
time, which is Greenwich Mean Time. It's the afternoon.
Morning,
But-
John.
Good time for America. Good time for America.
What times did you use before you won the War of Independence? Did you have your
Well,
own time zone then?
Yes, this is good. It's good.
I
7
don't know.
o'clock in the morning here. Yeah.
There seems like a better time for people. I know Jason didn't really like it very much, but the rest of you have.
For Saturday is okay. For Saturday is okay at this time.
Okay, well, I think I'll stick. It's better for me, personally, I have to admit, because then I can do another thing in the mornings here. But let's start. Welcome, everybody, to today's Asgardia Legislative Forum. For those who don't know, I'm the chair of the Parliament of Asgardia, and Asgardia is the world's first space nation. Our mission is to ensure the first baby is born in space, and in addition to that, the first permanent human space habitation. Not like the International Space Station, that's 6 months on, 6 months off, but whole families that are born and live and die in space as communities, as you would on, for example, an island where you don't go somewhere else to have your child. We want to create the first islands of human habitation in space, which sounds like a big ambition, but it has to happen, and we want to be part of that process. I'm going to chair today. There are no votes today. I would expect it to take about 2 hours. We have twice that amount of time allocated, but we do this so that we can focus on specific things. I'll go through the agenda in just a moment. And success for me is that everybody gets the chance to say what they want to say. We debate things. If there isn't a particular problem with the document, we can move on. It's not going to be a difficult thing. And what matters to me is that by the end of it, we have made significant progress in terms of the agenda for the next digital sitting, which should be at the end of June. So that's an overview of what we want to do. That's my mission objective. Looking at the agenda, I'll go through that in just a moment. Anyone can contribute, whether you're a minister or the chair or a member of as a Asgardian member of Parliament. It doesn't matter what you are, as long as you're here. I don't keep this unnecessarily long. I know this is people's weekend, morning, noon, and night. So if we can do it in 20 minutes, that'd be fantastic, but that won't happen. It won't be 20 minutes. It'll be a bit longer than that. Also, if you have any technical problems, you can't hear me, then please let me know. I think I have a pretty robust system here, so it shouldn't be a problem. But if there's any time when you can't hear me, then just say, and then I will make whatever corrections necessary. I have triple redundancy in terms of my internet, and I'm working from an Ethernet now. So if anything goes wrong, do tell me. It's important that we can hear each other. Let me go through the agenda. We're going to start the opening. Well, we're doing the opening of the ALF now, and we're going to review the agenda. Then we're going to go for the agenda for the digital sitting, which I'll just explain is pretty connected to what we're doing today. Then we'll do the Asgardia Consumer Protection Act, second reading. John Fine will lead on that. Then the Asgardia Information Safety and Security Cyber Act, third reading. All of these have progressed from the previous time. The Agenda Foreign Affairs Act, third reading with Ferda. The previous one with Ricky Sickles. Then Ross rightly points out that he doesn't want to spend time on something which isn't necessarily going to become legislation at this stage. There's an issue there, and I understand Ross's frustration. So it's on the agenda, but we're not going to cover that today. We will go on instead to the Digital Property Act with John Fine. At some point today, I put it in as item 8, internal housekeeping procedures, but we'll do that according to when the relevant people for that discussion are available, and we'll just break off. It'll be a closed session. Might be at the end, it might be during the session. Then a brief chat about future events where I'm inviting you to share what you have planned and what's coming up in your area so that we can all begin to make a proper agenda of things that are occurring internationally and nationally as well. So, for example, Clive Simpson is in transit to Portugal, to Lisbon for a space event there, and he'll be representing us for 2 days on Tuesday and Wednesday in Portugal. I'd like to know what's happening around the world so that we can do something useful in terms of attending if you think it's useful for me to do that. And then any other business and close. As I say, I expect it to be a 2-hour day today, maybe a little bit shorter. I like the fact that we can do these things quickly and efficiently because it's not about how long we're together, it's how much we get done when we are together. Right, so let's start with the first item, the agenda for the digital sitting. At present, I have the items which are here, Consumer Protection Act, Asgardia Information and Security, Cyber Act, the Asgardia Foreign Affairs Act, and the Asgardia Digital Property Act. However, I would quite like to get 2 new first readings in for the next meeting as well, for the next digital sitting. So my invitation to you is this. If you have a piece of legislation you'd like to submit in terms of core principles, tell me now or in any other business today, or contact me separately. We have space for up to 2 additional, at most 3 if they're short, but really 2 new items that we can then cover in the one more ALF, which we'll have before the next digital sitting. Don't make out legislation just for the sake of having legislation. It has to be for a reason. There has to be a good purpose for having it. So I'd be very grateful if you could send me that if you've got something. Right, that's what we're going to do in terms of the digital sitting. In addition, of course, we'll have the government hour and the financial report as well. And finally, we're going to have a vote on the chair of the next, maybe before then, but if not before then, we'll have a vote on the next chair of the finance committee. I'd like to get that done before then, but we'll see how I can organize that. Okay, so let's get on to the next piece of the next item, which is a Consumer Protection Act. I'll stop talking and John Fine will start talking. So John, over to you, sir. And thank you in advance for what I'm sure will be very good.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that. First off, I want to answer your question. The time zone that we used before we gained our independence was the individual towns came up with their own time zone, like Philadelphia Standard Time, Charleston Standard Time, and they used the sun as a method to do that. So there's the answer to your question.
Mm. So that is useful. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
There are actually something like 36 different time zones in the world, not 24, because in some countries, like Iran, there's a half-hour division as well. And I think Newfoundland is also half an hour ahead of the rest of Canada. Not a lot of people know that. Thank you for that.
I didn't know that piece of history until you asked the question, and so I looked it up. I said, "Wow, I'd always assumed we had one time zone, but or the four time zones I think we have, but no."
Suspect it might be more actually. But anyway, we don't need to discuss that. One of the interesting questions, though, is what time zone do we use in space? That's an interesting challenge, an interesting question, because it has to be connected to something. I suspect it would be UTC.
Yeah, I was hoping for UTC myself. I would vote for that because I think UTC is a very good time zone to keep everybody on the same page. But yeah.
Just out of interest, and I know this is a distraction, there are actually 11 time zones in American territory. 11.
Wow.
Yeah, that includes Howland Island and Baker Island, neither of which are inhabited, but they have their own time zone as well. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
But the contiguous US has indeed got 4 standard time zones.
Yeah.
Other ones probably have things like Hawaii included and so on. And depending how arrogant you are, if you consider the United Kingdom to be the 51st state. Right. Anyway, enough of that. Over to you, John, for this item.
Okay. All right. Let me share my screen here. I'm not going to do the actual presentation. I'm going to save that for the digital sitting. So I'm just going to go over the actual document themselves. And everybody should have a copy of that document. Linda put it in the document management location that she sent the email out on, is where those documents are located. So if you don't have it, you can follow along on the one with Linda, or you can follow along with the one I'm using. Okay. You said consumer protection?
Yep.
Okay. All right, this is the Consumer Protection Act. This is the actual document that will be submitted for the digital sitting. There were changes made the last time, the first reading. There were changes discussed both in the session that we had in the ALF, and all those changes were made. So most of them were just a few, shortening a word or something like that. I did dress up the acts, both of them, as far as using proper grammar and stuff, like looking for mistakes in spelling and what have you. I ran them through several programs to do that. So there may be a few little grammar changes, but it doesn't. They were just for just to make them look better, more presentable, in a proper grammar. Okay, core principles, of course. The Asgardia Consumer Protection Act is a pivotal and significant piece of legislation is being introduced to safeguard the rights of Asgardia consumers. This act, a crucial tool, is a legal document that establishes principles to ensure a fair, efficient, and informed marketplace for businesses and consumers. Its importance cannot be overstated, as it sets the stage for a balanced, just economic environment within the Asgardia Space Nation. And then we have the 6 principles, which is basically he's saying the exact same thing as what that first statement says. I won't go over all of them because, like I said, they say basically the same thing as the top statement. We got the articles, consumer protection policy, consumer identity. Those are one of the things that were changed from the last session because the way they were written before were kind of long, and so I shortened the title of them to say whatever that particular article says, but without having a big long sentence to say it. So I shortened them to short little titles. Consumer protection policy, 2, consumer identity, 3, consumer complaints, 4, consumer relevancy, 5, consumer non-relevancy, 6, consumer rights, and 7, consumer protection evolution. The purpose of this act, the primary objective of the Consumer Protection Act is to empower Asgardian consumers by establishing their rights and ensuring their constitutional, effective, and efficient enactment. This act defines and safeguards fundamental consumer rights, fostering a more equitable and transparent marketplace. Its purpose is to create a level playing field for all consumers, regardless of their economic status, and to promote trust and confidence in the market. Legal basis, the Asgardia Space Nation Constitution, the bedrock of our legal system, plays a pivotal role in guiding the implementation and interpretation of this act. Its relevant provisions form the framework within which this act operates, ensuring the reliability and strength of our legal framework and instilling a strong sense of confidence in our residents and the international communities. All right, Article 1, Consumer Protection Policy. This basically goes over that we should have a policy, which is the 1-1 there, forms a policy that one needs to be established. 1-2 and says that policy must include systems of administration and implementation appropriate for the progression of the timeline. In other words, like right now, there wouldn't be a whole lot of, you wouldn't want to create some kind of consumer protection agency right now because we don't have the funds for that. We're just starting out with this act, so once it's approved, you might establish a website or something, but you would start out with very simple way of implementing the act instead of coming out with all these agencies and what have you to try to right off the bat, which would be very expensive and we wouldn't be able to afford. So that's why I put that in there. This policy can include agencies, organizations, duty appointments, or any other measure needed for implementation and management with collaboration from the Trade and Commerce Committee. The Asgardia Consumer Protection Policy can be implemented through code standards, contract agreements, and other agencies within the Asgardia Space Nation. And what that tells you is that there's other means in which trade and commerce might not be the only ministry that is involved in consumer protection. There may be other ministries as well, so they would need to collaborate. And that article says they need to collaborate, at least collaborate with the Trade and Commerce Committee or ministry, because trade and commerce usually deals with consumer protection. But it also allows the other ministries to do their part in consumer protection as well. Excuse me. The relevant authorities will ensure that consumer transactions related to life essential services or products remain proportionately manageable regarding economics and availability. This policy must stay within the scope of the Asgardia Space Nation Constitution. Consumer identity. A consumer shall be considered any individual or company in the process of buying, trading, renting, leasing, contracting, merchandising, purchasing, requisitioning, acquiring, or obtaining ownership of goods and services by some other means within a manner that would be considered legal by laws of Earth and the Asgardia Space Nation. That's pretty simple. That's what a consumer is. Consumer complaints. A complaint is when the consumer is dissatisfied with the consumption of acquired products. And this does give the person, Asgardians, the right to complain. That's what this article does. And a complaint is because a customer is dissatisfied with the consumption of acquired products and services and wishes to have their argument heard with a reasonable settlement outcome related to their purchase. The following subsections shall be considered who may file a complaint. Of course, the individual, an authorized person acting on another person's behalf, a person acting as a member in the interest of an affected group or class, a person working in the public interest, and leave of tribunal or court association serving in the interest of its members. And that happens sometimes. You'll get a court. Basically, what that's saying, there may be a court order that invokes a consumer protection law or order, and the 3.1.5 gives makes that legal for them to be able to do that, basically. Consumer relevancy. The Consumer Act shall apply to the following: every individual consumer transaction occurring within the Asgardia Space Nation, goods and services supplied or performed for the Asgardia Space Nation, multilateral agreements between Asgardia Space Nation and the international community relevant to the scope of this act and the contents of the agreements within that relation, contractual agreements between Asgardia businesses and Asgardia, and agreements outside Asgardia relevant to the scope of this act and the contents of the agreements within that relation. In other words, there may be an agreement between nations and Asgardia on certain consumer rights that they may bring forward in their agreement, and that provision makes that legal, that they can do that if they put that in the agreement. And same thing with an individual. Asgardia may make an agreement with Asgardia or outside Asgardia with certain rights for consumer rights in that agreement that's actually put in the agreement that they both agree upon. And then that last number 4 gives them the makes that legal as well. Consumer non-relevancy. In terms of all transactions mentioned within this act, the act shall not be applicable in respect of agreements given effect to collective bargaining agreements specific to those agreements that abstain from consumer protections contrary to the provisions within the collective bargaining agreements. In other words, if they decide that they don't want certain consumer rights protected under that agreement, they can do that, and that's legal. As far as Asgardia consumer rights, they can. That agreement is actually trumps the Asgardian law between the two parties because it only affects them. It doesn't affect everybody. It only affects the persons that are in the bargain agreement itself. And that's something that they decided that they wanted to do. And we respect that. So that's why that provision's in there. International industry-wide exemption being granted for regulatory authorities, to regulatory authorities. Sometimes in the international community, there is an industrial-wide exemption that's made, and it says that all this particular consumer right is being exempt for this particular purpose. That does happen, and at least within United Nations, the countries within the United Nations that trade with one another, they all agree that they will honor that whenever that happens. So number two gives saying that we will respect that as well. Since we want to join the United Nations, we will respect international industrial-wide exemptions. And services under employment contracts. Employment contracts can be very different than, and an employee has to agree to that contract. Okay. And that's why I always say, read your contract, because you never know what's in there. So, and the employer's paying you to do that service. Okay. Employment is not a right. It's a service that's provided to people. And so you agreed to do that service, therefore you are bound to that contract. And so that's why we put that provision in there. We will honor contracts under employment contracts. Consumer rights policies concerning Asgardia consumer rights must include the following and be in accordance with the relevant laws of Earth and the Asgardia Space Nation. And these are the bare minimum that we're saying that the consumer protection policy needs to have in them. All right, there may be more as time progresses, but these are the bare minimum we say that the policy should have. All right. Equality in the consumer markets and protection against discriminatory marketing practices. And these are all pretty self-explanatory, so I'm just going to read them. Goods and services are available to all Asgardians equally when buying, selling, and trading, irrespective of religious faith or belief system, customs, gender, race, socioeconomic status, or geographic location. Believe it or not, in the world, there is discriminatory practices between certain people. They could be part of a class system, or they could be part of a race, or they could be part of a social order, and they get discriminated against as far as who gets what to eat and how they get to eat it, and etc. Or who gets what to use, or who gets what to drive, etc., etc., etc. That discriminatory practices does exist on Earth, and that provision there is saying that Asgardia will not have that happen within Asgardia, that's because our Constitution says that we are all equal, and we can't all be equal if we discriminate who gets what and where and when and why. So anyway, suppliers' non-prioritization and consumer groups over others when marketing, selling, or distributing goods and services to the consumer. In addition, suppliers are not permitted to vary the quality of their goods and services in a discriminatory manner. This provision does not include marketing strategies for specific marketing purposes based on targeted products and services. Okay, that's an entirely different thing. They're just marketing certain groups of people, and it's not done in a discriminatory manner. It's done in Well, you know, different people like different things, and a good business person knows this, and so they will create marketing strategies to try to focus that market on those people. And we all see it. It happens all the time. If you got a Facebook or one of those type of things that has advertisement coming through it, you notice that the advertisement is always seems to be advertisement that you like, and that's because there's an AI system out there that's strategizing that you will click on that and buy one of those products because they have figured out that that's something you like. So so that's legal. That's okay. We say that's okay because that's actually standard marketing practice in almost all businesses, and it's understandable. The right to privacy must include restricting unsolicited direct marketing, protection of privacy and confidentiality, protection from receiving unsolicited marketing of goods and services, explanation of rights for full disclosure of third-party agreements, non-disclosure agreements, tracking agreements, terms and conditions, and privacy protection agreements. These are agreements that we all, even when you go on the Asgardia website, it says this site uses cookies, whatever, and you have to click on accept. And you see that on all the sites. And basically, that's one of the agreements. Once you click on and say yes, you'll allow those cookies. You're basically agreeing to a lot of these agreements that are in this right here. So, and then any site you go on, they'll have a term. Anything that you apply for, it'll have a term agreement, and it'll have the privacy agreements. These are all standard agreements that are in just about every single thing that we do. So we need them here in Asgardia as well. Disclosure of source of personal information used. Okay, right to choose must include consumer rights concerning supplier of choice, damaged goods protections, solicited or unsolicited ownership of goods and services, refund stipulations of goods and services. Suppliers have the right to charge consumers for loss of damage to property, goods, or services if damage results from gross negligence, recklessness, change of mind, or deliberate actions. Stipulations of available goods concerning whether to accept or refuse open display items or open goods and request unopened or new goods. Refusal of goods or services if they do not correspond with pre-approved samples. Suppliers provide consumers with a reasonable opportunity to examine goods or services purchased or delivered. Right to fair and responsible marketing must include right to fair and honest dealings, reasonable terms and conditions, market value, quality, and safety. Accountability from suppliers on return policies concerning unsafe or defective goods and types of choices relating to refunds, repairs, and replacements. Asgardians are guaranteed a return with a full refund of any products and services of unsatisfactory quality, unfit for purpose, or not as described or agreed upon. Of course, that provision, burden of proof, is mandatory. And it doesn't specify who must have the burden of proof. There needs to be burden of proof. And normally this would be on the consumer, but sometimes it'd have to be on the supplier. It depends. It depends on the circumstance. But most of the time when you try to return something, they always ask you for a receipt. That's burden of proof. Okay? If you don't have the receipt, they don't accept a return. That's here in America anyway. Okay? Now in America, they'll let you return an item regardless what reason you're returning it. They will not question that reason. Most places, even though they say they will, they usually don't. Most places just take a receipt. Once you give them that receipt, they allow you to return the product, regardless of its condition. Now, of course, if it's all busted up, they're gonna question that. But most of the time, most people return items just because they didn't want them. But that has a limit, and it's a 30-day or less limit. If a person within 30 days should be able to realize whether they want something or they don't want something. All right. Or be able to figure out if it's unsatisfactory quality, unfit for purpose, or not described or agreed upon. That 30 days is more than enough time to figure that out. So that's why we put that provision in there. After 30 days, then they're not guaranteed. Then it falls under one of the other provisions, and most likely it'll be up to the not the consumer, but the manufacturer or the place where they bought it. So anyway, that's why those are in there. Right to cancel must include supplier explanation and direct marketing transactions, which consumers can cancel agreements. These are sub provisions, and suppliers must return consumer payments based on refund stipulations. Okay. Consumers have the right to cancel reservations, bookings, or orders, and that has a sub provision of suppliers are entitled to request a reasonable advance deposit for reservations, bookings, or orders, depending on the nature of the business and specific circumstances. And suppliers are entitled to impose a reasonable charge for canceling reservations, bookings, or orders, depending on the nature of the business and specific circumstances. And if you've dealt with, if you booked a hotel or a flight, those two provisions right there are standard. When you're booking that ticket, they'll tell you, they'll want you to leave a credit card at the beginning, and they say they'll give you a time limit, so usually it's, I don't know, 10 days. You got 10 days to cancel this, or you'll be charged half price or whatever for the booking, okay, the reservation. And the reason they do that, because when they hold that reservation or booking for you, right, basically what they're doing is they're canceling their ability to do business on that day during that time period that they're holding for you. And that's costing them money. So if you don't actually use that booking, you just cost that company a whole lot of money. Okay. So, because they will be able to book it. And that's why they do that. So they can recover the money that they would have made for that reservation or booking, what have you. Okay. Consumers' fixed term agreements automatically cancel upon the expiry of contract period without penalty or charge. And most of these terms are standard in any standard contract. Consumer must provide suppliers with a notice of continuation of fixed term agreements before expiration in writing or by other recorded means. Suppliers can impose reasonable fees to extend fixed term agreements. Consumers remain liable to the supplier for amounts owed to them concerning the terms of the agreement until the date of cancellation, and suppliers may impose a reasonable cancellation penalty concerning any goods supplied or services rendered. Suppliers must credit the consumers with any unused amounts that occurred after cancellation. Okay, and like I said, those are all standard in any standard contract. Right to accurate information must include consumer rights to information in simplistic, understandable language. Subsections for receipts and goods and services bought, for contracts, agreements, invoices, sales, and transaction identification records. So basically, anything that has to deal with that purchase or service that you've consumed or going to consume, it, any paperwork attached to it needs to be in a way, in a form that you can understand. And if it's not, then you have the right to take that to court and say, "Hey, this was not in or whatever." You have a legal right. You have a legal protection if it's not. Let's put that way. Okay. And let's see. We're number 3 was general information explaining consumer rights. Any other records? I think I already said that. Yeah. No, I didn't. Any other records pertaining to this act scopes concerning consumer suppliers or manufacturers. All information must be straightforward, presentable, and secure if necessary. Because there might be some things that are not necessarily secure, but if it's necessary for it to be secure, if that's been identified in some sort of means, then that pertains to this as well, and available to all relevant parties. And of course, the policy itself may actually break it down more. It may actually say who the relevant parties are. But right now, we really don't know that information. You know, we more or less have to create the policy and implement it, and a lot of times it's trial and error. You have to figure out who it's going to be. We know it's going to be all Asgardians, but we don't know all the stakeholders that are going to be involved. So we don't know what ministries might want to have their stake in the claim. We don't know that information right now, but the provisions set up, even though we don't know that information, they're all covered, every one of them. So that's why we set it up the way it did. Right to protection must include consumer protection against fraudulent marketing, promotion, and deceptive representative schemes. We had a big problem here in America with pyramid schemes, and the Congress had to come out with a law, an act to protect the American public against pyramid schemes. As a result of that, or actually they came out with a policy through the Consumer Protection Agency to protect against that and then spread that policy nationwide. Well, we have a provision in our act that covers that as well, and that's that 68-1. And subdivisions, fraudulent marketing is any marketing done by dishonest or unlawful means. It breaks it down a little bit more detailed there. And prepaid certificates, credits, and vouchers do not expire unless a contractual agreement is reached between consumer and supplier. Okay. Now, when you buy some of these prepaid credit cards that people get here in the United States, right? When you buy that prepaid credit card, on the back of it, there'll be instructions. All right. And those instructions, in that instructions, is that basically that's a contract between you and the credit card, the agency or prepaid agent, whatever. And like say a gift card or something like that. Right. And some of them will have a time date in there of when that card expires. Okay. A year, 5 years, whatever. Once that card expires and you have not used it, then that money's gone. It's no longer yours. It belongs to the whoever made that card. Okay. And basically it's the same thing. So what basically when you buy that card, you're agreeing to the terms on the card because you're supposed to read everything that's on the card. So, that's just a little something. If you didn't know that, some of those prepaid things that you do and credit and vouchers and stuff, read the fine print because sometimes it'll have an expiration date in there. And if it's and that card won't be no good, or that voucher won't be no good after that date. And you agreed upon it once you bought the card. Uh, uh, is how that works. Because you're supposed to read everything on the card. But anyway, consumer protection evolution. This act shall be considered provisional. Therefore, all rights and provisions within this act will evolve as Asgardia grows. And I expect it to evolve quite a bit from what we have now to what we will have in the future. The Asgardia Trade and Commerce Ministry shall encourage and collaborate on all additions, recommendations, provisions, and amendments, and update them as necessary to keep up with the evolution of Asgardia Space Nation and changes in Earth laws. It's basically, we're saying as a parliament, we want to make sure that the ministry, that the Trade and Commerce Ministry, be at least one of the responsible parties to keep our consumer rights and the provisions of this act, and to keep them current. That's basically what we're saying, and to collaborate with the other ministries in order to do that. And I don't think that's an unreasonable request. So anyway, that's it. That's all the provisions. Now, time for any questions or any comments that people may have.
Thank you, John. Questions or comments to John? It looks very straightforward to me. We've talked about it quite a lot already.
We have, and
Okay.
and it is, the great thing about consumer protection that there's plenty of information out there on it, and because it's something that people really think it's important. Not only people like those who work within the United Nations and those who don't, but as far as diplomatic ties or whatever, but also the individual consumer. Everybody's involved with consumer protection. So that was one fortunate thing that I had no. The well was slap full of information that I could get for consumer protection as far as figuring out what I wanted to put in there. But the hardest part was is weeding out all the material that wouldn't that that we didn't need, and that didn't pertain to Asgardia. Anyway,
Thank you. There will be. I'll obviously have to check just with administration, everything, just to make sure that they've got no particular feedback as well. But as far as I'm concerned, it's looking pretty good. Does anybody want to say anything? Okay. Ariadne. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I congratulate to John Fine. It's very interesting, all of that, because in the future, we need to create the path to protect the consumers, and all the details that he wrote there is so specific and so clear. And I like it so much. I'm both positive for this. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much, John. You get a lot of praise here. Too much praise. Right. Okay. I think it's good. We'll need to obviously work through the content of it one time just with the admin to make sure. But with that, I think we're pretty much ready to go with that now, John. Any specifics, I'll let you know. Thank you for that. Let's go to the So we finished with that one. Let's go to Ricky. Is Ricky with us today? Ricky.
Can you give me a chance?
Yeah.
Yeah. For personal reason, Ricky ain't gonna be with us today.
Okay. All right.
I'm gonna read, or I'm gonna let you hear a report about his document.
Sure. Okay.
I don't know which one is gonna be best, but I will try.
Okay, that's good.
Is his document? I just read it yesterday. Let me see if I can pull it up.
Okay.
Can everybody see it?
Yeah, it's coming out. Well, it says Ada, you started screen sharing, it says.
Okay. Just give me a second.
No problem at all. Thank you for doing this as well.
So I'm gonna try to wait. Yes. I'm gonna try to put this down for a minute. Yeah. So this is Asgardia Information Safety and Security Cyber Act by the Chair of Safety and Security, Ricky Cyrus, right? So I'm gonna try to load up.
So we can see it now.
Okay. So just give me a second, please.
Yep, no problem.
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, the contributor of this document was the Chair of Safety and Security, Ricky Cyrus, Vice Chair, Safety and Security, I represent, Minister of Safety and Security, Michael Serino, Minister of Safety and Security, Phillips approved. You know, he passed away, but he worked on this document also. MP Emmy Ice Melt, MP J Tata, and MP Ken Adams. So uh, objective of and score principle. I cannot do it, but I'm gonna read it then. So
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
okay. To establish the creation of security mechanisms necessary for the prevention of defense against attack, espionage, sanctions of all other security threats to Asgardia system to ensure of government and citizen information and security against possible attack to a national interest, as well as assuring each citizen's rights to the safety and security to the information, as well as the right to access it. This article would able to the creation regulation to ensure the integrate use of a protection of all Asgardia assets from attack, both internal or external, and both private and public. Legal base, Ascandia Constitution, Chapter 5, Article 21, 26, Article 30, Article 40. Not that this act does not mitigate as aspect mentioned in this article act of Act in 2018. To finish, legislative branch of Asgardia, which consists in the parliament, which define the law, and Asgardia representatives. Executive branch of Asgardia, which is the government consisting of ministers, the AVA implement and execute this law. You will see the syllables around here. Meanwhile, is writing at the same time, so you could get the document in. Linda already passed the document by email. Judiciary branch of Asgardia, which adjustable legal dispute and interprets, defense, and apply the law of legal case. The Asgardia Institution, which is the combination of LAB, EBA, and JBA. None of these bodies, which Asgardia, which are organization, business, associate, and other bodies defend and implement which Asgardia amount other influence, including all activities mandatory by minister. Non-Asgardia body, which are organization, business, associate, and other bodies that are not part of Asgardia, but that are interacting with Asgardia in some way. Information is knowledge, intelligence, and other data and fact. Information processing, including access to creation, modification, copying, transferring, and deleting of information. Office of Information Security and Technology, Asgardia Security Analysis Center, Asgardia Security Operations Center, Asgardia Information and Management System. Article 1, the official of IT security. The representative authority will be responsible for the implement of this act. Article 2, categorization and classification. Do I have to say the point 1 or point 2?
No, it's
right?
okay. It's all right. It's fairly clear. As long as people can see it.
Okay.
Which is fairly.
All the digital and analog information recording or maintained by Asgardia will be categorized and classified with level as defined and assigned by the Control Information Act of Asgardia. Categorizations will define the scope or the purpose of the data or system of physical area. Classification defines the sensitive of the data or system or physical area. Any human resources with access to system which process Asgardia data, including but not limited to storing, transmitting, viewing, discussion, destroying of data will be trained in categorization. I got a problem with that layer. And classification of the information being processed. Any system which processes Asgardia data, including systems related to the storing, transmitting, viewing, discussion, and destroying the data must be created or configured with the technical control appropriate to the categorization and classification of the information being processed based on the assigned level. Any government, corporate or private organization or individual which would fail to comply with this requirement will be subject of penalty in the line of the appropriate legislation. Data processing, implementation of system for data storage, transmission, destruction, processing. This display must be or assist in special standing by the respective authority of the law, Asgardia, and implement countermeasure of safeguarding information security corresponding to the relevant international legislation. Third party providing service of the Asgardia government must certify through requiring audit and all system of resources processing Asgardian data with the minimum relevant standard required by regulation. Infrastructure, safety and security, that's Article 4. The relevant authority are required to create and maintain the Asgardia Security Operations Center, who's responsible for the creation of maintaining the safety and security digital infrastructure for Asgardia, as defined in applicable regulation. Branch duty. The branch duty says no citizens of Asgardia should take part of any action that directly or indirectly cause the compromise of any system or information for the purpose or cause harm which is subject to the due legal process for resolution. The severity of the sanction or correction discipline of each violation will be defined by the applicable regulation. Article 6, freedom of information. This part, most of the first and second reading, Ricky explained it very well. So every citizen or resident should have the right to receive information of their own interest on or of public interest from public entirety and Asgardia body, Asgardia government body, which should be given with time limit prescribed by the law of Asgardia. The requirement citizen and or resident is responsible for any fee required to supply the requirement information. Information not covered by the law is that created by non-government residents, citizens or entity or the private sector, except when the private sector entity perform functions or duty which were previously with the domain of the public service or government. It's explained by itself. Requests of information regarding the following item may be denied based on the nation's interest or for a legal reason. Denied or request can be re-evaluated based on the appeal. All information requests should default to approval unless explicitly denied according to the specific denied ground. Information can be released in part or whole, redacted, depending on the classification level, and if the classification has expired. The relevant authority may extend or reduce the classification period. Article 7, computer fraud and abuse. Fraud-related activity. Those who know knowledge and access, retain, or distribute data without authorization or by sending authorization access to be potential injury of Asgardia and against the public interest, or who corrupt data belonging to Asgardia or its citizens should be subject to the correction or discipline as set forth by the relevant authority. Article 8, Asgardia Information Management System. An Asgardia Information Management System will be a system of metric and processing to ensure the safety and security for all Asgardia information systems, and will be established according to the appropriate code. Article 9, security for medical record and personal information. In accordance with Article 22, Section 7 of the Asgardia Constitution, the relevant authority should ensure the integrity and security of all personal and health record of Asgardia citizens. The government should ensure that Asgardia citizens have full access to the control of their own health and personal record. Article 10, government and data information. Proposal sponsored by the Asgardia Parliament will be stored in a secure system as defined in relevant code. Article 11, Asgardia minimum security standard. Categorization, information security, categorized security process, and interoperability requirement with nations and organizations outside Asgardia, and protection, response, and recovery system. Update passage of acts. Some aspects of the legislation are already in place and function. The ministers that do not have everything in place will work with the Minister of Safety and Security along with the Prime Minister as set up a scheduled timeline for a minister to comply with the Asgardia information safety and security. thank you for listening. And this is Ricky and Silas document reading. Mr. Lambe, back to you.
Thank you very much indeed for standing in for Ricky. Any questions or comments? I'll leave that up for now, and just in case somebody comes up with something. Further.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for my voice. They worked a lot for this, and I am totally with them. And I hope we will vote it, and it will finish and be active, please. It had been so long, and at last we are having. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Agree with that. Let's hope we finally get through with this. Anybody else? Okay, John.
Yes, I just wanted to say that version was much appreciated. It certainly has gotten a lot more simpler than the original version, and I definitely agree with all the articles, and I will be supporting it. And I think Ricky did a great job. I think that the safety and security did a great job getting that act to the level that they've gotten it. It's certainly, the very first one was much longer and much harder to understand, but this one here is very simple and very easy to understand. So this version. So I really like this version.
Thank you very much indeed. I think it's good. It's much improved. It really is. But that's why we do this process, and it's really working. I think it's really, really good. Anybody else on this? Okay, let's carry on. I still think we'll probably be finished. Well, maybe 2.5. Maybe we'll be finished at 15:30 or so. But let's keep moving. Now, at this point, we're going to now do the housekeeping section. Rebecca, I'd ask you just to explain to viewers. We've just got one piece of housekeeping. It's just an internal administrative matter. So hopefully stay with us. Don't go anywhere. We've had an internal housekeeping matter. We'll play something else while we're doing it, and then we'll come back to you around the world. So Rebecca, could you just let me know when we are